The alarm on my sled screamed so loud that my ears rang inside my helmet. I had never heard that sound before, not once in 4 years of hauling supplies across the Cathari wastes. It meant only one thing. Something alive was out there, freezing to death, right now, close enough for my sensors to catch it. I slammed the brakes. The sled skidded across the ice and stopped just short of a deep crack in the snow. My hands were already shaking, and not from the cold. I had no time to think. I grabbed my emergency pack, checked the oxygen seal on my suit, and jumped out into wind that could freeze bare skin in minutes. The storm was already building. Dark clouds rolled in from the north, and I knew I had less than an hour before the real blizzard hit. The heat signal pulled me toward a ridge of broken rock. As I climbed over it, I saw the wreck. A small pod, half buried in snow, its metal skin scorched black in places. It did not look like any ship I had ever seen. The metal seemed to ripple, almost like scales. My radio crackled with static. No one was answering. I was alone out here, 3 days from the nearest outpost, with a storm closing in and a wreck that should not exist. I climbed down into the broken hull. The wind howled through the cracks in the metal. My flashlight beam shook as I moved it across the wreckage, and then I saw them. 3 small creatures huddled together in a torn nest of insulation. They were shivering so hard I could hear their small bodies trembling. Long snouts, folded wings pressed tight against narrow bodies, scales the color of dark copper. They looked like something out of an old story, the kind you tell children before bed. Dragons. Tiny, freezing, dying dragons. One of them lifted its head and looked straight at me. Its eyes were a deep amber color, and they were full of fear. It let out a thin cry, weak and short, and that sound hit me harder than the wind outside. I did not know what these creatures were. I did not know if touching them would hurt them, or if some huge parent creature was going to come tearing through the wreck to protect its young. I had seconds to decide, and every second mattered more than the last. I tore off my outer coat, the one rated to keep me alive in temperatures that could kill a person in minutes, and wrapped it around all 3 of them at once. Their small bodies felt like ice through the fabric. I lifted the whole bundle against my chest and started climbing back out of the wreck as fast as my legs would carry me. The wind hit me like a wall the moment I stepped into the open. Snow flew sideways, stinging any bit of skin it could find. I could barely see my own sled through the white haze, but I ran anyway, holding those 3 small lives against me like they were the only thing keeping my own heart beating. I reached the sled and threw myself inside, sealing the door just as the storm turned from bad to deadly. Wind slammed against the hull outside, so strong the whole cabin shook. I did not care. I turned every heating coil in that small cabin up as far as it could go, past the safe limit, and I held the shivering bundle close to my chest, praying that my own body heat would be enough to keep them alive. Their small chests rose and fell, and I watched each breath like my life depended on it too. I started talking to them, though I do not know why. Maybe silence felt too heavy to sit with. I told them to hold on, to stay with me, that help was close. My voice shook just as much as my hands. One of them, the one who had looked at me first, pressed her snout into my arm. I decided to call her Ember, since I needed a name for her, something to hold on to in that freezing dark. Her whine grew quieter, not stronger, and that terrified me more than any storm ever could. Hours passed. The blizzard outside grew worse, then worse again, until the whole world outside my small cabin was nothing but roaring white wind. I could not drive. I could not risk losing the road in a whiteout that thick. All I could do was sit, hold on, and wait. The second one woke up first, blinking slowly, confused, but alive. Then the third, the smallest one, opened its eyes too, and for the first time since I had found them, all 3 were breathing steady. I did not sleep. I could not sleep. Every time my eyes grew heavy, I forced them open again, terrified that if I looked away even for a moment, something would go wrong. By the time the storm finally broke, My fuel reserves were dangerously low, and my own body felt like ice from giving up my coat. But 3 small chests were still rising and falling under the blankets I had wrapped around them, and that was worth every shiver I felt in my own bones. I pushed the sled forward the moment the storm cleared enough to see the path. My hands barely worked from the cold, but I gripped the controls and drove toward the nearest relay station as fast as I dared, watching the small huddled shapes beside me the entire way. When I finally reached the station, my fuel gauge was nearly empty, and my fingers were too numb to feel the door release. A medic at the station, an older man named Callum, who had worked the wastes longer than anyone I knew, took one look at what I was carrying and went completely silent. He asked me if I knew what these creatures were. I told him no. I told him I had found them dying and was not about to let that happen while there was anything I could do. Callum looked at the 3 small shapes now resting inside a heated medical crate, finally breathing easy, and then he told me the truth. These were Cathiri, a rare and protected species from far beyond our system. Their parent ship had come under attack days earlier, and this small escape pod had launched on its own, carrying no adult, just an automated system trying to save the young before the ship went down. It had done half its job. It had gotten them away from danger, but it had crashed here, in one of the coldest places in known space, with no one expected to pass by for weeks. Except I had passed by, and I had stopped. 4 days later, the Cathiri elders arrived. Their ship was so large it blotted out the sky above the station. I stood outside, feeling smaller than I ever had in my life, not knowing if I would be thanked or torn apart for touching their young. The lead elder stepped down, a creature so massive that my whole sled could have fit inside one of her claws. She lowered her enormous head until one amber eye, larger than my entire body, looked straight into mine. She spoke, and her voice was not a sound so much as a feeling, deep inside my chest. She said I had given her young my warmth when I had little of my own left to give. I told her that anyone would have done the same. She said no, not anyone. Very few would. Ember pressed her snout against my hand, one final time, before the elders lifted their young back onto the great ship. She was warm now, steady, alive in a way that made my throat tighten with something I did not expect to feel out here in this frozen, lonely place. They did not take her far. I learned later that Cathiri custom holds a rescuer's bond as something that does not fade with distance or time. A small Cathiri outpost was later built near the mining station I used to service, meant, they said, for diplomatic purposes. Ember visits every season, bigger each time, though never quite as big as her elders. People sometimes ask me why I stopped that day, why I risked a deadly storm, an unknown wreck, and creatures I had never seen before, all for a heat signal that was not my job to chase. I always think back to that thin, weak cry, and how much quieter it became instead of stronger. I think about how close I came to driving past, to logging it, and letting someone else handle it later. I do not have a clever answer for why I stopped. Some choices are not really choices at all. You do not decide to help. You simply find yourself already moving toward the danger instead of away from it. Coat off, arms full, heart pounding, because something small was dying, and you happened to be the only warmth left for 100 miles in every direction. That day, it turned out, that was enough.